I've got 9 bottles of champagne in my fridge.
Oliver Campbell, an innocent man, celebrating with his supporters after a fight for justice that's lasted 34 years.
Yeah, hold on, I'll let you speak to Maggie.
We've won. Yeah, but Ollie's won.
How do you feel? Do you feel angry, bitter, relieved, happy?
It's been very hard, but I'm trying not to... someone's been trying to tell me you have to feel happy, but I am happy, but it's very hard for me to show happy, because of what's happened and what certain people said and done over the last 34 years.
Earlier this year, lawyers told the High Court that Oliver, who suffered severe brain damage as a child, had been pressed by police into admitting a murder he hadn't committed. In 1990, 2 men tried to rob these premises in East London. It's a restaurant now. Then it was an off-licence. In a struggle, the off-licence owner, Baldev Hoondle, was shot dead. At a police station without a lawyer, Mr. Campbell told detectives he was the gunman. His hat was found at the scene, but it had been stolen days earlier.
The most likely explanation for a false confession here is that Oliver confessed as the least bad option.
The appeal judges accepted new medical evidence of Mr. Campbell's susceptibility and quashed his convictions for murder and robbery. The judges said a jury, knowing of the fresh evidence, would be considering the reliability of those confessions in a materially different context. In those circumstances, we cannot say that the fresh evidence could not reasonably have affected the decision of the jury to convict.
He was treated as an adult. He is not an adult. He was tried as an adult. He had no support. It's not how he would have been treated if he'd been tried today. And there is now far more evidence about people's disabilities, and people are more open about it.
What are you going to do now?
I don't know, that's trying to get in contact with friends I've lost over the years, but that's trying to get in contact with family and friends I've lost contact with.
You've been acquitted,
yeah.
So you didn't fire the gun, but somebody did. What should happen now?
The only time there's going to be freedom is if certain authorities reopen the case and go after the person who done it.
Over all these years, 33, 34 years, your pursuit of justice, what do you think has kept you going?
That's saying the same word. Where if it wasn't, it's the evidence, overwhelming evidence. You have to word it in a way where they're going to say, well, if it's not him, who is it? And then everyone I've spoken to, I said, you know what? I said, all the evidence don't point to me, it points to someone else.
The Metropolitan Police said it would study the details of the court judgment. Martin Brunt, Sky News.
Oliver Campbell's barrister, Michael Birnbaum, KC, joins me now. Good to see you this evening. Thank you so much for joining us. You have fought to clear Oliver Campbell's name for over 2 decades. How are you feeling tonight?
Delighted. Really sad that it didn't happen much earlier. I can go into that to the extent that you want, but please ask me whatever questions you would like, and I'll try to answer.
I will do. You're delighted, relieved. It's been a hard fight for the both of you. The frustration you have felt at stages, I mean, we will get into that, but it is relief and delight today. Just to use a word that you have used in the past, you have called Oliver Campbell's arrest, charge and conviction a nonsense. If you can, just take us back to the start, because it was on such shaky grounds from the beginning.
The nonsense was the admissions that he made, which involved his admitting, for example, and bear in mind that he's heavily left-handed. He admitted to police that using his weak hand, his right hand, And your viewers may want to think about how they could do this. He managed somehow to make a holster out of 2 pieces of string and carried the gun in that, and then had to untie the pieces of string in the shop in order to produce the gun. Well, first of all, how was that physically possible? And we now know from neurologists that he couldn't have done it physically because of the fact that his right hand was so weak. But the evidence of the son of the deceased was quite inconsistent with anything like that happening, because he would have seen the string being untied and would have found the bits of string on the floor. So how that was ever treated as a credible confession is beyond me. Next, and this hasn't really come out, there was important evidence at the time that Oliver hadn't done it. And the source of that evidence was a man called Eric Samuel. Eric Samuel was arrested. He appeared to say something which suggested that Oliver was with him. But some days later, he told an officer that Oliver had not been there and that his accomplice, the gunman, had been someone who had stolen Oliver's hat. And that didn't come out at the trial. You may be astonished to hear that. Well, the prosecution didn't call it, and under the law as it was at the time, Oliver's counsel had no right to call it. It was hearsay. When it came to the appeal in 1995, there was another man who said that Samuels had told him that Oliver hadn't done it. His name was Sanderson. The defence wanted to bring that out at the appeal. Court of Appeal said, and strictly speaking they were right, said, no, we can't hear this evidence. It's hearsay. Ridiculous. The law was an ass. Nowadays, I'm glad to say the law has been changed. And if Oliver's trial were heard today, there's no doubt that that evidence would be heard. And the other thing, in the hat that was undoubtedly worn by the gunman, there were hairs that could not have been those of either Oliver or Eric Samuel. Powerful case that he didn't do it.
Yeah. It all seems so clear and so obvious now, and you've gone into some of the detail as to why that didn't come out in trial and any appeals. There has been talk of Oliver Campbell's mental capability to carry out something like this. He is a man who has learning disabilities.
Well,
and Martin Brunt, our crime correspondent, alluded to it in his report there, saying that back in the 90s, it wasn't well understood, it probably wasn't regarded, but now things are different. In that regard, can you talk to us about how things have changed?
Well, first of all, and this is one of the sadness of this case, although it was plain by the time of the trial that Oliver did have severe mental disabilities, his IQ is about 75, it wasn't until more sophisticated tests were done in 2003 that it became clear that his memory was terribly poor, he can't process information, and unlike you and me, he can't formulate an answer that he really wants to give and can be accurate to a question. So he ends up talking nonsense at times because he can't help it. Other times he's very personable and lovely, as you've seen. And he wasn't equal to the challenge of the witness box. He made a complete hash of his evidence, not his fault. And the judge, I'm afraid, made some very tough and unfair comments about him, and he went down. Jury didn't hear the full picture.
Well, Michael, you and Oliver are obviously celebrating this hard-fought, long-fought win, but tonight there is a family of the victim who still do not have justice. And Oliver said that. He said he can never see himself as being truly free until the real perpetrator is caught. What happens in that respect now? Because this is an historic case.
I mean, I think it would be very difficult for the trail, which is so cold, to be pursued. And one of the problems that I saw from the papers is it didn't seem to me that the police really did very much to investigate what Samuels told them. For example, he said that the gun had been sold in a club in Lambeth. I saw no evidence that they'd even made any inquiries at that club. Well, useless to do that now. So I think that whoever did it, if he's still alive, has probably got away with it. And of course, one's sympathy, one's heart goes out to the victim's family. They behaved with great dignity throughout. It's a tragedy for everybody.
Yeah. Really hard for the family of Baldev
Indeed.
Hoondle to take today, and we should, of course, keep them at the forefront of our mind in all of this, as Oliver said he is. What next for Oliver? Because what kind of support does he have now in terms of coming out of this whole process? You can talk about compensation, but, you know, what kind of real practical support is there for Oliver Campbell? Because he has been through a terrible ordeal, and given his mental disabilities, that is a lot to process.
Yes, he does have the support of very good friends who really look after him as much as they can. He's had the support of the probation service, which has been very valuable. That will cease now because he's no longer convicted. I think he'll get support from social services and from others, but he'll need a lot of time and a lot of help to come to terms with what has happened to him.
Michael Birnbaum, Casey, Oliver Campbell's barrister, thank you so much for talking to us tonight. You must be exhausted after a momentous day
Thank you very
and a
much.
lot of media interviews, so we appreciate you taking the time this evening. Thank you.
Thank you.